How's everyone doing today? We're on the road here, rolling through the cornfields. We're gonna go back and finish up the scouting that we just did in the last video. If you remember, I was explaining to you that it's kind of a staircase with a couple thermal hubs in it. We got done with the first thermal hub, which was actually on the second stair of the staircase. So we're gonna go back today and stay out of that area for sure and go a little bit a ways from it and scout out the next thermal hub. So we're heading out there now, cruising down the 2-track, about to get to our spot in probably about 5-10 minutes. Alright guys, on the way to the parking spot here, we've been doing some road scouting and I noticed a giant trail that's going up into the area that we want to scout. So I'm going to flip around and show you here out of the truck. If you look right here, you can see this huge trail going back up into there. And we're going to drive around on the trails, but that's going up into the area we're going to scout out. So that's very promising. Alright guys, we're cruising to the spot still. We're up in the hub now that I want to scout out, but as I was cruising down the 2-track, I noticed some giant tracks coming down the trail. So we're going to hop out real quick and check those out. Alright guys, as you can see here, there's a giant buck track right here. You can see he's walking all the way down to his dew claw. About the size of my hand. So we're gonna follow these tracks for a second and see what he's doing. And if you see right here, he's actually crossing the 2-track here. Look at the size of that track. You can see right here, there's a trail going right up through here. I'm gonna actually walk back a little bit, but if you see right here, he's been walking right here too. The reason I'm going to walk back is because I first noticed his track coming up this way, but if you notice on that track was going the other way. So here it is right here. Another ginormous buck track. Look how deep he's digging into the sand right there. I mean, look how deep my hand goes into the sand. Alright, we can see him walking here. So we're going to follow this back and see where he came out. You can see he walked up here, then he came down here. Always keep your eyes out when you're driving or signs like this. Think about how many people would have just drove over these tracks or just drove right by these. But this is a huge buck using this. And the thing is, he's walking both ways through here. It looks like this might be where he stepped out at right here. Walk down a little bit further. I don't see anything any further. So if you see right here, and you go up into here, it looks like he stepped out right here somewhere. I'm going to make sure and mark this on the map right here where I think he stepped out on the 2-track. And then I'm going to go back and mark on the map up there as well where he would cross the 2-track going the other way. Alright guys, I marked that on the track. I can actually see where this buck is walking right here some more. I just walked in front of the truck a little bit. You can see right here, look at this. Oh my god, look at the size of that track. Look at the size of that track. That's as big as my whole hand. He's there, and he's there. Look at the size of that track. Alright, you can see the trail coming right up here. Alright, you can see some other deer crossing here. Here's a little doughy track. We'll definitely mark that on the map but I'm gonna walk back up here. I'm so glad I decided to walk in front of the truck. Look, here's another buck. Not as big as the other one, but definitely a nice deer for sure. Here he is again, walking right down. Not as big as that one. Did you guys see the size of that track? I think that may be the biggest deer track I've ever seen in my life. It was literally, a lot of times I put my hand in them, but did you see my hand next to that track? It was as big as my hand. That gets me fired up. Alright guys, look here. Here's another big buck crossing. You can see he's coming up out of here and into here, out of there. Look at this one. He's got a very unique foot. He's got kind of a pointed thing. That's an even different buck there. Another big buck track right here. Another one here. I think that's that giant one right there. Look at that track. That's that same deer. Oh my God, look at that track. That's the same deer. That is a giant deer. Look at that. He's going right up this trail right here. Another big buck track here. Another big buck track here. I don't know what it is about this right here, but they're walking through this area right here big time. I'm gonna walk down here a little bit further. Look, here's another big one down to the dew claw. I think that's that really big one. Nah, maybe not. He's a little smaller, probably his son. Look at this, we got some predator tracks here. Some coyote. That's a big coyote. Look, there's that big buck again. There he is. Look at that, right down to the dew claw. That is a huge deer. Some running here. We're coming up to the intersection in the 2-track here. Once we get up there, I'll turn around. You can see he's running through here as well. Running through here. Running through here. Look at this. It's so nice having the sand for them to track in. Gives you a perfect impression of their track. I mean, you could cast those right there. Alright. We're gonna head back to the truck now. Look at the size of these acorns right here. This is why. This is what they're after. Alright. We're gonna walk back to the truck, but that deer's tracks are all over in the trail right here, everywhere. So we got to the parking spot here up in the thermal hub, and it looks like where we ended up is on the very top of the hub itself, which fortunately is looking like it worked out to be a giant white oak orchard. So I'll flip this around so you guys can kind of see the terrain, and then we're gonna follow the top of this ridge around the inside bend like we did, looking for the trails that are going to be coming down into this thermal bucket. Unfortunately, we're not going to go and scout out where we just found all those giant buck tracks crossing. I marked that whole area on the maps. I'm going to go back and e-scout it, get a really good plan, make sure I have plenty of time, and then go back and scout that out for sure. But I'm so excited about that. It's so hard not to rush down there right now, but we're going to stick to the plan here and get this thermal hub scouted out, finding the trails that are going down into it, and then we'll come back in here if we don't find the sign we want and scout it out better later as well. Alright, as you guys can see, this is just a giant oak orchard right here. It's just huge on both sides of the 2-track. So we know those deer are coming up in here to feed for sure. We're gonna keep following this around. It looks like this might be the other side of our thermal hub. And then this is the side over here. So this thermal hub wraps around like this and comes through here. So you know, with this hilly terrain like this, these deer are coming in here to feed at a certain time. Always maximizing the thermals to their advantage. We got another big buck track right here. Crossing up into here. We're getting to an edge right here, and the edge of our geography as well. So I think I'm gonna look right here for a little trail along this. Looks like there might be the remnants of an old road. This looks like an old road they dug up, but look at this huge deer trail. There goes a deer. I don't think that was a deer. I don't know what it was. It might be a deer. There's something over there. Not sure what it is. I saw the birds fly. Partridge. There they go. Maybe it's just partridges, a bunch of partridge in there. I saw them laying in the 2-track on the drive in. Yeah, look at them all going on the trees. I think that's what it was. It's a bunch of partridges. But you can see the deer trail go right here. Oh, there goes more. That's a lot of partridges. I think that's the most I've ever seen in one spot. That was crazy. Alright, we got this big deer trail going here. This is definitely a giant hub, but it's definitely very open as well. Definitely these huge oaks are everywhere. But as you get in here, like I said before, it's not as open as you might think it is. So these deer will wind their way through all this brush and stuff. Alright guys, we bushwhacked for a minute. Didn't really see any sign. Saw some more really big buck tracks in the trail though. Now I'm trying to get on the sign. Looking for rubs. Looking for something in here that's gonna lead me to the bedding. We know right now we're in the end source. We're in the food source. What we want to do is figure out how they're getting here. How they're using this thermal bowl. Obviously with this food source being right inside of this thermal bowl. This looks like a big trail. There goes a deer right there. She's standing right here. The point. Mark this point on the map while I was sitting here for a minute, letting that doe cool down. Now we're gonna keep pushing that way. See if maybe we'll bump into her again. She's just showing us how they use the area. So it's not a bad thing right now. It's just a young doe who's in here early. So we're gonna flip the camera around and keep working up the edge of this thermal bowl. And that's right where she was feeding, right on the back end of this thermal bowl on the hillside under all these giant oaks. I don't know if you guys can hear the thunder in the background, but there's a lot of thunder. Seeing a giant trail right here now. see this is all browse down. You guys see all this right here? This is browse from deer. See how it's all browse down, browse down, browse down. You can see the edge right here. If you guys look, you can see the edge right here. All the open oaks area, but I'm guessing back on the top here is where they're bedding. You can see this hill wraps around. She could have been bedded right down in here with those partridges and then just moved right up into here to feed. Just a younger doe trying to figure the routine out. That might be where she was laying right there. It's a big deer bed right there. Doesn't look like a buck bed though. This is right about where she was too. Alright, mark that bed right here. We're gonna keep pushing. I can hear the thunderstorms in the background. Hopefully I don't get rained on. You can see down here there's some thick cover going down the hill. Actually move down the hill a little bit. See if there's a trail closer to this edge. Just see all the acorns down here. There's acorns everywhere. You can see where they've been feeding in here like crazy. See how the ground's just scraped clean. Look at all their deer sign in there. There maybe. This is definitely an area they feel safe feeding in. Alright guys, it looks like we finally found our trail right here. You can see it running right along this hillside out of that feeding area we just were in. I marked that on the map obviously. You can see all their feeding side down here. The ground tore up. So, we're going to keep marking this. Not sure how the deer are getting into this feeding area yet. It looks like they're skirting this edge right here. But the way this is set up, I'm guessing they come from down here. They wait for the thermal shift, which sucks everything down to them. And then they just slowly come up into these hills and feed. Looks like we might have a mini scrape here as well, guys. Look at this. The branch hasn't worked over it at all, though. There's a big scratch in there. In bare ground. Look at this down here. I think this might be a bed. I see a really big buck rub right here. Alright guys, we found one of his beds right here. You guys see this huge bed right here? That's where he's laying. Look at this massive trail right here coming into here. So this is how they're coming up into that feeding area from down in there, like I said. Look at this tree, it's just rubbed up. Both sides are completely rubbed. Wow, look at this, guys. Is this this a vertical rub? I don't know, I think the tree's just doing that, but that'd be so cool if it was. I'm looking at this more and more, and I'm trying to talk myself into thinking that's a scrape. I don't know, tell me what you guys think, if that's a big bed or a scrape. It's right in the trail, that's what makes me think it's not a bed. It's all rubbed up right there. You can see the ground's kind of messed up. And what got me was this right here. It looks like they're licking this. You guys see that? See this down here? See that? I think this is a scrape. So I think I was wrong earlier, guys. I think this is a giant bucket ancient scrape. Right there's the licking branch. It's not right over the scrape like they normally are, but like I just showed you, if you guys look, you can see this is all broken up. This branch back here is chewed on. And up there, that looks a little scraped up. That looks kind of like rubbed a little bit. This tree is all messed up. Looks like they might be going this way. We're going this way. We took the trail up to the right there. Keep following the contour of our bull. Both trails looked equal. But if you look down, here's the bottom of the bowl. And then here's the edge of the thermal hub. We're back on the trail. Little bedding area over here. Oh yeah, look at this. Some big bed here. Alright guys, I marked this bed in the map, and I'm going to flip around and show it to you, but if you look and see where this deer lays right up on here, he's got every advantage there is. His back is to the hill behind him, with the predominant wind blowing over him. He's looking in front of him, down this hill, through all these trees. He can see anything coming in front of him. He can smell anything coming from behind him. So I'm going to flip around and show you guys. Here's the way he lays with his back. The predominant wind comes over that hill, down over him, and blows over his back. And then if you spin around, you guys see this is nothing but a giant bowl right here. You guys see this? Now that bowl starts heading down this way. So he's laying, looking down here through these trees. If anything tries to approach him, he can see it. You can see his big trail going down that way. Since this is the tip of the bowl, we're going to follow this big trail out of here. Because that's what the feature is right here. Is those deer are bedding right there. Or that deer is. Looks like one deer, but one deer's using it a lot. Could be our giant. Who knows? I know I'm fired up about those giant tracks we found. Now we're coming to a giant blowdown up here. If you see, this is a huge blowdown. We're still on this big trail through here. That's somewhere I could see a big deer laying. He's laying right up this hill over here. Lots of room for him to move. Lots of cover. Lots of room for him to see. Lots of places for him to run away to. This is crazy. Look at this blowdown. So that definitely changed the deer movement. Looks like we found ourselves a chanterelle. How's that look, guys? Oh, that's a goodie. Such a beautiful mushroom. Oh, there's more. Look at those guys. Pretty awesome. Alright. Obviously scan around here a little bit. Do a little side quest for some mushrooms. Looks like another tiny one. Alright guys, I guess dilly-dallying with those chanterelles was supposed to show us this big bed here, so luckily we found what we're after. I can see his big trail coming up out of it, so we're going to get on that now and keep following it. See the big trail. Another thing we're noticing about this trail too is a big deer could move through here easily. And with those tracks that we found, those were multiple big deer. Obviously we had that one that was absolutely ginormous, but the other two were big as well. Alright, that was super fun finding those red cinnabar chanterelles. One of my favorite mushrooms to find. Absolutely delicious. A gourmet delicacy. Man, what a treat. We're going to keep rolling here and obviously keeping our eye out for more mushrooms and looking for that big buck sign still. Oh, got another one right there. Got a couple more right here. I don't think those are just pieces. A couple more little ones. Oh, look at this big bed right up here, guys. Right behind the chanterelles there. Another massive bed. That's one deer. Look at that thing. Alright, that's what we were supposed to find. That's what the chanterelles were showing us. Alright guys, I marked this spot, this corner right here, because there's that giant blowdown right here. That buck's bedded back this way. But in case I want to use that later on, maybe to my advantage, I marked that giant blowdown. It's kind of making like a natural corner right here. You can see the trail going. Got some low. That looks like a fawn scat there. Not quite ready. That's the coral mushroom, if you guys don't know, that's edible as well. Now we're starting to see that big blowdown, but also the geography of the land is making a big bowl in here. Or that deer's laying back down in there. That's super interesting. I could definitely see that giant deer doing that. He's laying down in that bowl. If anything tries to come into this little bowl area, he can either hear it or smell it. If he doesn't hear it, as soon as it gets in this bowl, he can smell it. Some more amarita. Got some deer sign. We see the trail, how he's coming up out of here. Looked to me like that trail that we followed down into here was his main way in. Looks like maybe he's coming up here. Yeah, looks like they're coming through here. You can see the trail. Alright guys, we're up on the top of the bowl now. I'm going to show you how this works. If you see this edge right over here, that top edge, back over there, way back over there, way over there, comes around over to here, and it comes around right to where we're standing. And you look down here, it's a giant bowl. That bed was at the very bottom of it by the Chanterelles. The other one is on the back edge of that bowl. Anything gets down in that bowl, if he doesn't hear it before it gets here, he can either see it or smell it, and he's gone. I marked this trail going down into the bowl. Now we know where he's entering on the back side and where he's entering on this side. We're going to keep following this trail back away from the feeding area, trying to see what we get into. Might be a bed right over here. We're coming up onto like a little flat knob right here. This kind of looks like a big bed right here. We got a trail coming down the ridge. We got the other trail coming out of it right here. Alright, this is definitely a bed on the top of this hill right here. Looks kind of like more like a doe bed, so I'm going to mark this. They probably lay up here, and he lays down in the bowl. He can scent check them down there. They're laying up here like his little bodyguard. These trails are fortunately just heading right where we want them to this time, so we're going to keep following these trails and mapping out this thermal hub. We haven't found the big scrape we're after yet, but we definitely have found some good sign with that giant bed. We saw the doe over there feeding, so we're doing good so far. This looks like it's heading up into these widths. They're either coming from around this side of the knob, or they're coming up in this seam. Looks like there's a trail here. Yeah, you can see this big trail through this seam right here. There's a little seam right here that connects down into this bowl. Goes right down into the bowl. One thing I'm noticing about these trails, even though they're going through the thick, they're definitely wide. My head's not hitting on anything. Big deer could definitely come through there. Alright, we're up on top of the bowl now. Kind of looking for signs, looking for the trail. There's our buck grub right up there. We're gonna mark this on we're gonna mark this on the map right here. That rub isn't going the way that we want it to go, so we're gonna head the way that we want to go, keep following the contour of the thermal hub, and then looking for trails, scrapes, rubs along the way. Big rub here. This is just like a natural seam right here that I could definitely see those deer moving through. Over here. We're kind of on the top of the ridge right now. Kind of coming out of that little bowl and then getting onto the bigger part of the macro hub. Some big grubs over here. She's all ripped up. All over. Every single spot. There's some oaks right here. I'm starting to notice there's some oaks right here, very secluded, right up out of that bedding. We got another big bed right here. We marked this big bed. It's surrounded by rubs right here. Now I can see his trail coming out of here. We're gonna keep following this. Looks like we got some sort of man trail right here though, right next to it. So that's not promising. This is definitely some sort of 2-track here. That's what can be helpful and hurtful about all these old logging roads. Michigan's been clear cut like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, every tree in it. So there's roads everywhere, even out here in the middle of the biggest wilderness tracks you can find in Michigan, there will be roads. So it's just something you gotta deal with. Some of them are very helpful, some of them not so helpful. They can be very useful for helping you to get out to your stand though, if you can find the right trail or logging road. Keep you quiet, move you fast, get you to your stand quick. Other times they give people access way back into places that you don't really want them to have access to. So we're gonna cruise this because it's basically going right where the thermal hub is. And we're looking for rubs and stuff. I think we basically found the area right there. Their little core area right there. And we don't have as much time today. So we're kind of heading back, looping around to the trail. We've been on this trail for a minute. It's really thick on this side. The bowl goes down that way. And then back up on this side, it started opening up again. Back into our oak trees. So you know they're feeding in these open areas at night. And then bedding in between there in this thick stuff. It's kind of got me thinking too, when we kicked up all those partridges, I thought for sure I heard a deer the first time. And then I saw the birds, and then I thought I heard a deer again, and then I saw more birds, and then I think I kind of talked myself into the fact that it was the birds. but it very well could have been a deer and the birds. Maybe we kicked that buck up out of there, a buck, and then when we came around that backside, that's where that doe was. And we didn't know he was laying right down in there yet. Obviously, I had my theory, but could have been another doe too. But as you guys can see, we're following our old 2-track down. This just opened up big time. This was just cut recently, the last couple years. And then over here, we got our dark old woods over here where they're probably bedded more. We're gonna keep following this down. It's gonna connect into the main trail here. And we're gonna head back to the truck. Well guys, as we're cruising along, I think we got our first active scrape of the season right here. You can look up here. If you guys look up here, they've been chewing on these oak leaves. And then if you look down here, this is all freshly scraped. You guys see that? Look at this, it's all fresh. Just fresh pawed out. You can see right down here where he's pawing it. And then you can see up here, he's been chewing on these oak leaves. See how these are all chewed up? Well, just cruising along this old 2-track here on the edge, and didn't think we'd find an active scrape this early, but there's our first active scrape of the season. Definitely looks like maybe an immature buck, maybe someone getting fired up, I don't know. It's in kind of an open area, but it's a good sign for us to find right coming off the back side of all that buck bedding we just found over there. Today we're not going to have time to really break this area down. We just put a little crack into it now. We know what we're getting into. We'll go back home with these points that we did get, drop them all, e-scout, and then make a better plan for when we have more time to really nail this down. There's a lot of hills out here, and I can tell this is probably going to take a couple years to scout this out correctly. But we'll keep chipping away as much as we can this year without disturbing it too much, because we're getting close to season. We don't want to be tromping around very much longer. Then we're going to switch into glassing. So we're going to mark this fresh scrape on our map here just to give us a bearing to work from, get back to our geography, and then make a plan for when we come back for part 2. So you guys can see this big trail running right down this edge. It's just an old 2-track that nobody uses. And that's right where that scrape was. So if you guys look here, down here, there's a giant bowl. It goes back this way, back that way. That's where we just came from. And that scrape is right here. So my guess, he's probably bedding back in here somewhere, scraping right here, and then heading that way. Deer track there. Alright, now we just found the scrape that we're looking for. You guys see this? Right here? Now look at this licking branch. Look how thick that is. That's thicker than my finger. They're obviously not working this one yet. This side's gnawed up over here. You guys see how that's all chewed up? I can't get it to focus on the tip of that for some reason, but that's all chewed up. This one's all broken up. Interesting. Alright, we're going to mark this on the map as well. Alright, I'm just standing here looking at that scrape for another minute here. One thing I notice about it is it's looking pretty old. The stick over it is dead. And maybe that's why he's migrating down to the other one. But you could tell that had been scraped at some point. I'm gonna walk out over here. Got the deer scat down here. This is under a giant cherry tree too. It's all grazed down. I wonder if they're grazing on the cherries right here. There's something going on here because you can see the scrapes right there. I'm wondering if they're bedding right here. Because look at this, there's an old ring right here. There's an old turnaround for the trucks right here. Yeah, I think this is a giant bedding area. Look at this, guys. Here's another scrape right here. It's a little scraped up. You can see this. This is all broke up. Got a rub right here. Now we got a really big trail coming here. I think they bed right here in this little area at a certain time. If you see right here, it's just a giant bowl in here as well. And they're backed up to this edge here. They can run that way. This is kind of a unique little area right here. What happens here is there's an old logging road coming from the other way. It dead ends right here and then rings around this tree. And then those scrapes were on the road before this ring is formed. But it looks like the deer are using where this old turnaround was for the trucks, this whole area, as a bedding area. And that's why he's got a couple scrapes right here. Alright, we're going to mark this and then keep moving. Alright, we're going to keep following this big trail out of here. Alright guys, I don't know if I want to be a betting man here or not, but there's a possibility that this big trail is going to come out on the 2-track right where we saw all those big buck tracks. If it does, that means we're definitely in the neighborhood here. We gotta hurry, it's starting to rain. But we're gonna keep following this big trail through here. You can see how big it is. This is the exact type of area that bucks want to travel in. Still keeping our eye out for scrapes along the trail. Looking for big rubs. Any sort of big buck sign. Opened up big time right here. There's a big trail right here. Look at this bed here. Freaking enormous. He's bedding all over right in here. Look at all these beds. Look at the size of that thing. Look at this buck rub right here. Alright, this is another one of his beds right here. You see, he's got this giant tree right here. Well, not a giant tree, but giant for over his bed. He's got this little tree right here hanging right over his big bed. Alright guys, I'm going to step back from this big bed and show you guys how he's laying in here. You can see this giant trail coming this way. But if you look back here, he's got a bed here, he's got a bed here, he's got another one back there, he's got one back there. He's just moving all around in this little area. Mark this giant bed in the trees on the map. Unfortunately, I can't follow the giant trail out of it today. So I marked that on the map, and I'm going to head to the 2-track now and see if we do actually come out. Right where them big buck tracks were. It's getting to be later in the day now, and I don't want to be tromping around out here for very much longer, because them big deer are going to start standing up soon. We already saw that young doe. She just moved into the area early, which is another prime example of what those deer are going to do. So we're coming out on the trail right now, and I'll be blessed, but it's coming out right where those big buck tracks were, guys. So we're coming out right here. Right here is where the deer come out. You can see he's stepping down right there. Alright guys, this has got me so fired up right now. I don't know about you guys, but I get so excited finding these giant deer beds, and then to find these absolutely the biggest deer track I've ever found in my whole career. To find it right here in this 2-track, to drive up it another mile, and then to scout full circle, and to come back to here after finding those giant buck beds and that scrape. What does that tell us? We're right in his core area. So I'm going to flip it around so you guys can see that that's where we're coming out of the woods, and follow these big buck tracks back. We're going to cruise up here a little bit further so I can show you where Big Boy was coming out, where we were earlier. But you'll be able to see all my tracks in the 2-track along with all them big buck tracks. Look, he's crossing right here. Look at that track. Look at the size of that. Where we just came out of was right over here. That's a rock. That was a rock, not a deer track. Alright guys, here's one of my boot tracks from earlier. There's one of those giant tracks from earlier. Alright, we came from full circle on this one, guys. We're definitely on a big deer now. I'm so fired up. I'm so excited to be able to share this with you guys, and that you can come along for the adventure here. Obviously, I'm going to go home, mark these points, get my mind right, get a plan together, and we're on to something big here now. We got gentle summer rain starting to fall now. So peaceful out here. We're going to keep cruising. Been walking down the 2-track for a minute. I'm seeing Big Boy's track all over in here. So I'm so excited about this area. All fired up for a new project. Nothing gets you more excited than when you see those tracks like that. You can see all the scrapes you want, all the rubs you want, all the other things that you want to see. But when you see those tracks like that, then deer can't help but tell on themselves. So that's complete confirmation that there's a giant running around here. Alright, we're back at the truck now. Thanks a lot for coming along for the ride. Thanks a lot for watching. Make sure and like and subscribe if you like this unfiltered scouting content. because I really like bringing it to you guys. So I hope you guys all have a blessed season, and we'll be out here scouting all day, every day.